we're going to have a reflection on the relationship between our inner ecology, what it's like inside, when people ask you, how are you feeling? How are you doing? That is a question about how we are inside, maybe on the surface of our feelings. We feel frazzled, we feel distracted, we feel peaceful, we feel angry, whatever. But then there's a deeper ecology, of course, within us, which explains or reveals to us how we are doing at a deep level in the core of our being, as it were. And then what is the relationship between that inner ecology that we're all aware of every day, every minute, and our outer ecology, which means how we interact with other people, how we interact with organizations, with networks, how we do our work, and of course, how we deal with the environment. Then after my sharing some reflections on that inner-outer ecology, I'd like to invite you to meditate for a while, because the key link between the inner and the outer ecology I'm going to suggest is the practice, or can be the practice, of meditation. Meditation is a very universal wisdom. It's as old as humanity, or human consciousness. And it's a wonderful, renewable human resource of wisdom that is available to everyone. We teach meditation to children, to people in recovery, and to people working in social justice projects, to homeless people, to business people, to students, and so on. So meditation really is not I'm not suggesting that it's a cure-all, that you just have to meditate and suddenly the global warming will reduce and we'll get to 1.5 in 6 weeks. But I do believe more and more, and I think more and more people are seeing this, that a contemplative approach to solving these complex interrelated problems, which is what COP26 is all about, requires some new approach. And this is, I understand it, what the Institute is particularly concerned with. How to have a conversation, how to deal with polarized situations. And for this, I think meditation is very clearly a catalyst for transformation. So after I talk, I'd like to suggest that we meditate together, because meditation is experiential. It's not a theory. There's a lot of research being done on it. That research has been being done for 40,000 years, if you include the research of the great contemplatives, the indigenous traditions, the mystics of all traditions. These have been experimenting and experiencing what in more recent times the fields of science, neurology, psychology, brain science have also been researching the benefits of meditation that can be measured. So as I was coming into yesterday, as I was coming in to the center here and had to give my bag to be checked, they pulled me over because they had said there was something suspicious in my bag. And this was what was suspicious. So it's just a bell. So they said to me, do you have a blade in your bag? So I said, no. Then I realized it was this. So anyway, what I would like to share with you today may not do you any good, but it won't do you any harm, as the Irish say. And then after the meditation, maybe meditate for about 10 minutes, we can have a time for sharing and discussion and feedback, for conversation. So just to, again, to try to put it into perspective without instrumentalizing meditation as if it's some kind of tool that you can use as if it was a piece of technology to bring about a desired result. I think meditation is transformative, but it works in a let's say a non-measurable way, but a very perceptible way. But a little meditation goes a long way. I think 1% of the Earth is water, but only 32% of that is fresh water. And only 1% of that 32% is accessible on the surface. So meditation could be compared with that 1%. People who meditate regularly will do it and feel happy if they do it every day. We would recommend meditating in the morning and in the evening, which balances the day on a very natural ecological rhythm, of the rhythm of sunrise and sunset. And many people, of course, today find they don't have the time for it, or they don't have the support they need for it. But it takes time for most people. It took me a few years after I was introduced to meditation, and I needed to become a monk in order to develop my regular meditation. But the overwhelming majority of people just find a way, with the support of others, in the community that meditation creates, to develop a daily practice. But it's a very small part of the day. If you meditate for 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening, that's not the end of the world in terms of your daily schedule. We might ask ourselves why most people, if they're asked about meditation as a daily practice, would say, yeah, I would really like to do it. I've always wanted to meditate, but I never get round to it, or I can't keep it up once I start. So it's not easy, but it is simple. And developing that small, tiny, less than 1% of the day to the practice of meditation has a perceptible result on your inner ecology. People notice the difference, which is why they continue to meditate. And then I was talking to a doctor, or at least I was listening to a doctor speaking at a conference on meditation to other doctors recently, and he said, when I started to meditate, the problem was meditating twice a day. Today, the problem is not meditating twice a day. And this doctor, Barry White, is just finishing tonight, actually, a year-long series of talks on deep health, of contemplative health. He's a hematologist in Ireland, but he's developed, I think, a model of health which is really important for our inner and outer ecology. Medicine is an example, medical science is an example of how things can get out of balance. And there are, of course, many doctors and healthcare professionals who are working to rebalance it so that it becomes human-centered rather than computer-centered. And in that model of health, he has meditation as a sort of informing and regulating principle. So we live in a world of pollution and disruption and increasing anxiety about it. It's water, it's carbon, the grasses of the world, biodiversity, the air, sound, light, and things like social justice and urban psychology, the loneliness, the domestic abuse, the drug use that accelerated around the world in urban societies. Most people live in cities now during COVID. So if we talk about the ecology being out of balance, we have to see all of those different aspects. Those we can measure, like carbon and emissions, but also the human involvement, not only in producing that imbalance, human imprint, the Anthropocene era, but also the way we are affected increasingly, psychologically, socially, economically, personally, by this very complex ecological disruption and imbalance. And of course, there are many ways in which we have to address this global complex issue. And this COP26 and all the pavilions and all the stands and this little stand and all of these elements are represented here. And of course, the secret is, how do we get them to work together without being competitive, without clashing with each other? And that's the great challenge, to create a common mind. How are we going to create the unity, the United Nations, that is going to allow us to deal with all of these complex individual issues in a coordinated, coherent, and peaceful way? It's not enough just to have a solution to them as individual problems, but how are we going to have the wisdom to coordinate the healing, rebalancing process? And wisdom is our greatest hope today. In the Book of Wisdom, it says, the hope for the salvation of the world is the greatest number of wise people. Now, I don't know how you count wise people or how many wise people you need, but we clearly need to raise consciousness to create an increasingly large critical mass of people who have a sense of what wisdom means. And if you do have a sense of what wisdom means, because your inner ecology is coming back into harmony, then you are more aware of what wisdom means, because you see that it is a vision of the whole. It's a holistic picture of the whole system, the whole ecology of which we are an interactive and today very responsible agent and part as well. So it's in this sense that meditation is a practice, a simple practice and a universal practice. It's wonderful to see all the indigenous people in their national dress here, walking around with all the grey suits and ties. But these indigenous peoples have long understood and can still transmit to us the meaning of wisdom by the way they live. And when the European colonial powers settled or invaded and exploited many of the countries or continents from which these indigenous peoples came, we now have clear understanding that the indigenous people were not just passive victims of this, they were critical victims. They could see the kind of mindset, the kind of society that the white Europeans were coming from, and they rejected it. They thought it was absurd. They thought it was not about freedom. It was not about all the things that the white man was saying. So this wisdom that I'm talking about has also flowed into humanity through the post-axial age religions. 500 years before the Common Era, there was this amazing shift of human consciousness. That was the beginning of Buddhism, the prophets the Greek philosophers, and so on. This was a shift in human consciousness. We may not have the right to say that that same shift is taking place now, but there's a lot to be said for the fact that it's necessary, that we need to shift global consciousness. And because we can communicate and interact so much more quickly than we could in the past, there is every good reason to hope that it won't take the 500 years or so that the first axial age required. So we're part of a great tradition. We're part of a human transmission that is still happening. And we know what the symptoms of our dis-ease are, our disconnection. We know the physical, the psychological, and the social, economic, technological symptoms of being in a situation where the inner ecology is not relating to the outer ecology in the harmonious and healthy way that it should. So we need to draw on this wisdom as a medicine, as a real medicine for the human soul. And you don't have to get it on prescription. It doesn't cost anything. No pharmaceutical company has yet come up with anything that can take the place of meditation. Our training, of course, is to look for an outside solution when there is a big problem. Wisdom says we need to look inside first before we can reconnect and reharmonize ourselves with the outer world. So all of these symptoms point towards the need for a healing process, a restorative process that is going to allow the self-healing to take place. All healing, medical science is fascinated by this, hasn't quite understood it, but acknowledges it. All healing involves self-healing. It involves the relationship, of course, with the people who are your health, your healing providers. It also involves what you feel about it, your level of trust, and whether you want to be healed. So, and any outside healthcare has to activate the inner healing. Of course, nothing can keep us alive forever. Nothing can prevent us from being sick at times or suffering. So we need to see how sickness and suffering and death are also part of human health and human wholeness. We have to accept the fact we're going to die and accept the fact that there's going to be suffering. But without this coordinating wisdom, when we suffer, or when we face our mortality, we go berserk. We fall into despair, we fall into denial, or we fall into unhealthy ways of self-distraction or self-destruction. So it's in this sense then that I wanted to suggest to you, not that meditation is a magic wand. There are no magic wands. There's no technique that can bring about this self-healing and this restoration of the inner and outer ecology. But it can be done. And the practice of meditation is a practice that at first hardly seems able to do it on that scale. Especially when you first start to meditate and you find it difficult to sit still and difficult to pay attention and difficult to do it every morning and every evening. Of course, then you feel, well, this isn't going to work. This is where we need to feel connected to other people. And fortunately, when people start meditating, they start to connect. See this in the monastic tradition around the world, throughout history. When somebody went off into a cave to meditate on their own, it wasn't long before other people started to seek them out and sit with them, and a community formed, an ashram formed, or a monastery formed. Meditation creates community. The why is perhaps one of the important questions for the 21st century. But certainly we can say that it does. And I've seen over the last 30 years, our community form through the practice of meditation on the part of individuals, small groups connecting with other small groups then becoming a national community, and so on. And we're not an organization or an institution. It's a spiritual, meditation-based community. And what is the work? At the heart of it, it's silence. Silence. It says in the Upanishads, happy is the person who has found their work. And happier still is the person who has discovered that silence is work. Now, meditation, in this sense, is the work of silence, because it is the work of attention. We live in an age of incredible, golden age of medicine in many ways, an age of golden technology and achievement. And for all our problems, we are solving problems as well, although we're creating bigger problems, of course, with our ecological irresponsibility. But with all of that, we find it very difficult to communicate. Conversation is very difficult in societies, cultures which are dominated by social media. Do we really communicate much on Facebook? And when we come together with people of different opinions about COVID, or about wearing masks, or about vaccination, or about Trump, or about the Democrats, or about climate change deniers, when we come together with people we really disagree with, do we know how to communicate, to have a conversation? Or do we simply add to the polarization, to the breakdown of that communication? And this is where meditation has an enormously important role to play. Exactly how it can play that role on the large scale remains to be seen. And I don't think it can be imposed from the top, obviously. No government directive is going to say you have to meditate twice a day. But because this is a personal experience, it can move from the personal to the social. And that's, I think, what we can see happening. So I'd like to just say a few words about meditation itself and how we can meditate. I'm not going to go into a long history of different methods and different traditions. I'm going to describe how we teach it from my own Christian tradition, but it's a way or a method that is found in all the traditions. So this is why we can meditate together with people of any faith or no faith at all. So that's what I'm going to just focus on and try to keep it simple today. But of course, if you meditate in your own way, then continue to do that. I'm not trying to impose one method on you in any way. Important thing is that meditation is not abstract. It's experiential. It's a work. And it's actually a work of the whole person, not just the mind. But the very first thing that we discover when we meditate is that our minds are very distracted all over the place. All around us here now, as you can probably hear, there are thousands of different conversations taking place. It's not so different in our own minds. The mind is like a tree full of monkeys jumping from branch to branch. So how do we, and when you first discover that, you may just want to run away because you don't like what you find. So we want to distract ourselves from distraction by distraction, which only makes matters worse. So meditation is a way of cutting through that gently, but progressively, especially with regular practice, through a very simple work of attention. Just think of how important it is in a conversation that you feel when you're talking that the other people are listening, and that when they talk, you're listening, that you're paying attention. And there's nothing worse and more divisive than to be in a conversation where somebody is chronically inattentive, that they're, doing their emails while you're talking or while you're having a conversation with others. So you're either present or not. And to be present means to be single-minded, to be present in the here and now. That's the work of meditation. So here's a very simple way of doing it. As I said, it's not just the mind, it's the body as well. So why don't we just take a moment to sit upright? Maybe move your shoulders around a little bit so you get back into your body. We put your feet on the ground so that you feel sort of balanced. You can put your hands on your lap or on your knees. So it just gives you a sense of human, physical balance and comfort, but with your back straight so that you are more likely to stay awake and be alert. Okay? Relax your shoulders. You want to be relaxed but alert. And then in a moment, I'll invite you to close your eyes lightly. And then we begin the inner work, which is to, in this way that I'm teaching, to take a word, a single phrase or word, and stay with the same word, the same phrase, and to keep repeating it in your mind, and later you'll find in your heart, over and over again during the meditation period. So today we'll just meditate for 10 minutes, but normally I would say 20 or 30. But 10 minutes goes a long way as well. So choosing the word is important because you ideally stay with the same word all the way through the meditation and from day to day. This allows the word or the mantra to begin to sink more deeply into your center, where your balance is to be found, where the ecological balance can be reset. And then, of course, with practice, that balance radiates outwards in your life and relationships and work. So staying with the same word is very helpful. Don't worry about distractions because that's how we start. We're human beings, we are distracted. When you get distracted, just drop the thought. It could be a solution to a problem. It could be an anxiety that keeps returning. It could be a fantasy. It could be, practical, logistical problem. How am I gonna have lunch today? So all of these are distractions at the time of meditation. Even good thoughts are distractions. Meditation is not what you think. So as soon as you realize that you've stopped saying the word, just gently let go of the thought and return to the word. So the word I would recommend, if you have your own word, of course, say that. There's a word that we recommend kind of universally because it is a sound that you can find present in this form of meditation in all traditions. And the word would be Maranatha. Maranatha. So I say it's not the only word you can choose, but if you're just starting now, that's the one I would recommend. The fact that it's not in our own language is a good thing because it's not stimulating thought or imagination. So let's try that for 10 minutes. Sit with your back straight, feet on the ground. Try and sit as still as you can. Let's take a few moments to be aware of your breath as you breathe in and breathe out. Basic rhythm of all ecology, basic rhythm of life. And by giving your attention to your breath, you are beginning to take that attention off your thoughts. And that is what's going to bring you into this deeper interior space we call the heart. Then to go deeper and to stabilize this work of attention, you can begin to say your word silently, without moving your lips or your tongue, in stillness. The word I would suggest again, Maranatha. Ma-ra-na-tha. Ma-ra-na-tha.
I'm just going to slip right in.
Good. So let's conclude with these words from the Book of Wisdom. I came to wisdom and searched for her, for she is subtle, intelligent, and pure, beyond the wealth, beyond health. She is our ultimate goal.